Hello, Dr. Dlamini Zuma. It's me again, your buddy here from the south of South Africa. I hope you're fine and all the stress around the legal matters that are flying around are not too much of a burden to you. Doctor, I really believe that part of your motivation around the approach that you're following around smoking, cigarettes, and so forth is based on a very deep care and concern on your part for the health of the people in this country. I do not think that anybody can dispute that, even though many would like to do so. Many would try and attribute all kinds of secondary motivations to the attitude that you've adopted. But at the same time, I think we should all bear in mind that your mindset around smoking is quite similar to that of many, many other doctors in the world. Many doctors do not like smoking. I also know a few that will have a cigarette with me on the quiet and sometimes also quite openly. But be that as may, they are in the minority. So nobody can really, if they're absolutely honest with themselves, deny that it would be your normal and your natural reaction to be concerned about the health of people and about their pain and their suffering, and that would be part of your motivation at least. But on that note, I would like to talk to you about something else. Accepting for the moment that your concern about the pain and suffering of people is one of your main driving forces in life. Shouldn't we not think about the pain and the suffering of those people involved in small businesses of any race in South Africa that are having pain and suffering as a result of the COVID-19 circumstances? I want to tell you that as far back as 1941, the highest court in South Africa made the statement, which is until to date very often repeated, that there are not really scales whereby one can measure pain and suffering. And what the court recognized and accepted when it made this statement, often repeated since by the courts, is that it is a very relative matter. Now, it is quite normal that one would have a concern around the pain and the suffering of those who are not finding themselves in the best financial circumstances. And I suppose it's then also normal to think that those who were more privileged have less pain and suffering than those who were less privileged over the past 40, 50 years in this country. But, Doctor, is that so? Is it not true that pain and suffering and the physical and emotional burdens that people carry can never be assessed on a group basis because it is an individual thing? For example, you might have a very wealthy person, a very privileged person. His or her race is not at all important. That same person is suffering, for example, from quite intense depression. You understand that, you're a medical doctor. Now, that person has millions, but something goes wrong with his business. He or she has a deep concern for his or her employees. The fate of his business is now weighing very heavily on his mind and on his heart. Now, this man, this multimillionaire, his suffering during COVID-19, and very often on a repeated basis, despite his material and financial privilege, could be much, much more than that of the underprivileged person living in some other very limited and unfortunate circumstances. Why is that so? It is because, like everything else in life, pain and suffering is not something that is absolute or exactly the same in different people. It's a relative thing. It's relative to the psyche of the particular individual. It is relative to the person's biochemistry. It's relative to his or her age. There are a multitude of factors that come into play. So to stand back and to go and say that the pain and the suffering of those who were less privileged in the past is more than that of the person who was more privileged in the past is nonsense. As you all know, if a wealthy person comes into a hospital and is in physical pain, his pain might be less or might be more than that of the person who is not wealthy. So, on what basis, on what fair and scientific and medical basis does one then say, my response as a medical doctor who concerns myself about the pain and suffering of people is that I want, in the first instance, relieve the pain and suffering of those who were less privileged in the past rather than those that were more privileged in the past. And what about the historically privileged person who today, on the pain and suffering level, is not at all privileged? What about that person whose personal situation, perhaps relationship-wise, is such that he cannot bear any pain and suffering? We have seen people in this world that would commit suicide. It's not necessarily people that were underprivileged in the past. It's often people that were privileged. What does it tell us? It tells us that pain and suffering cannot be measured on a group basis. once we accept that, would you not, as a medical doctor, feel in your heart of hearts that I don't want to discriminate between races when it comes to pain and suffering? If I have a person of this race or of that race in intense pain and suffering, it will be my natural instinct as medical Dr. Dlamini Zuma to want to relieve that person's pain. Doctor, the reality is that those who have businesses or who had it when COVID-19 started, the intensity of their pain, particularly in your small businesses, is quite severe. And why is that? The reason for that is that in these small businesses, the owner very often finds himself or herself in a position where he or she very often assumes an almost paternal role towards those that are working within the business. He or she feels like the father or the mother of all the employees. And let's say there are 6 or 7, make it a very small business. And let's say COVID-19 has hit that business. And let's say that owner now has the burden of having to go and tell his 6 children, because that's how he or she is experiencing it, that unfortunately I will not be able to pay you at the end of the month. Have you got any idea of the massive impact and intensity of pain that comes out of that? Now, doctor, that being so, on what rational basis can you support regulations suggesting that whether or not a small business should be supported in these days should be based on racial factors? Bear in mind the spiraling pain that is caused. You've got an existing business. It's got, say, 60 employees. Each one of them has, say, 3 dependents, so we're talking about 18 people. No, it's actually 24 people. And all of them are hit with immense pain because you have decided that that business should not be supported in these difficult times. Now let's compare the pain of the owner and the pain of his or her employees. What they are facing is significant changes in circumstances, loss of employment, loss of housing, loss of many things. Now, you know as a medical doctor that the major traumatic events, one of these in life, is loss of employment. There's no difference between the impact of that on a person of this color or that color. The intensity of the pain is the same. The owner of the business carries not only his pain of losing his or her business, he's also carrying the pain of his or her employees. Why do you, as a medical doctor, not feel that you have to also address that pain? Are you saying to me that if you were to walk into a hospital ward and there's two people there, and the one is of this color and the other one is that color, and the one of that color is in immense pain, and the one of this color is at that particular time not in real pain, are you going to disregard the one in the immense pain? And if the pain should change, are you going to disregard the other because of his or her race? Surely, doctor, that's not your instinct. That's not been your calling in life ever. Your natural calling has been to help people. Doctor, I would like to say to you, please help the people. Please help them. You can do so. And you know, if you help to get the established businesses going again, it will have a spiraling effect on all the people because it will create employment. It will relieve pain all around. Well, doctor, are you adopting the attitude that tough luck, I see the pain, I see the opportunity to relieve the pain, I'm not going to do so because the other guy was in pain, let's say 20 years ago? Are you going to follow that approach? Is that what you're doing? No, doctor, that's not who you are, and you know it. And doctor, you have to think again and ask yourself what is right. You and I are of the same country. We are the same human race, and we owe it to all of those around us to help to relieve their pain. So I'm requesting that you will do so and that you will help the small and medium enterprises regardless of race. I'm talking about those in the tourism industry. I just want to tell you, I don't have any tourism business. Thank you very much, Doctor.